Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl. We're looking at the Dwarfen mountain holds in Warhammer the Old World. So in the last episode, we took a look at one sample 2,500 point army list, which I like to play. I think it's fun to play with and play against, particularly with my style of play. We're going to look at something a little bit different this time, just to give a bit more flavour to a different list. So first up, we'll take a look. Straight away, you'll notice there's no king. We're going for the Anvil of Doom, which I actually rate quite highly. It is pretty expensive. In fact, it's the most expensive thing in the army list, but actually has some interesting utility. So we've got an Anvil of Doom in there with a Rune Lord as well. So you're pretty good in terms of your magical dispel. So, you know, it's kind of almost as good as you're going to get against a strong magic army. But your Rune Lord in there again, shield, full plate, Rune of Spell Breaking, pretty much a default setup. I like to give him the sort of the armor defense, but I like to give him that automatic dispel as well. So that is kind of your sort of runic magic piece. I've got a Thane in there as well. He's taking a shield. He's also a battle standard bearer. He's taking a rune of shielding because I don't really want to lose my battle standard bearer. And the master rune of Grungni as his battle standard, which is the ward save and ward save against shooting attacks to units within 6 inches. So you'll see how that's going to play out. And then I'm taking 2 dwarf engineers this time with handguns. They're really cheap, great utility, the ability to entrench, ability to make things re-roll, and the fact that they're pretty much untargetable when they're next to a war machine. So that does bring us to 728 points out of a maximum of 1250, so a little bit more than the previous army list. You know, as I said, I kind of think that most of the time in terms of characters, being around the 25% portion of an army for dwarves kind of works pretty well. That's 625 points, so just slightly over there, but the Anvil of Doom's expensive. But for me, I mean, yeah, some armies, they really need to splash out on characters. The dwarves, not so much. And you know, but I think this is pretty reasonable with the bulk of that cost really coming from the Anvil. So in terms of the core, we've boosted up the unit of Quarrelers now. So we've got 20 Quarrelers instead of 15 in each unit, with great weapons and their full command. So going to give you a few more shots out there. And supporting them, we're putting in the 15 Rangers, again with great weapons, full command, and the Rune of Battle, just giving them that +1 combat result. So again, a little bit more in the core, still pretty close to the minimum, but you know, that's plenty of missile fire here. So you can see kind of where this is going. We've got our anti-magic, we've got plenty of missile fire, and we're taking 2 engineers. So that's kind of where we sit in terms of the core. And let's see what's coming up next for the special category, which is normally the most competitive. So in the special category, we've got 20 Iron Breakers. This is where the Rune Lord is going to sit. So you've got your 20 Iron Breakers with a Rune Lord inside it. It's got the full command and the Rune of Confusion. So again, something I just like for the Iron Breakers, means that anyone charging them is going to make a disordered charge. We're taking 2 units of 3 gyrocopters, which is, it's just, for me, it's just great with that mobility. We don't have the lots of big infantry blocks here. So you're not just going to be able to sort of move up the mid-board and sort of kind of block off areas with these really hard to move blocks of infantry. So there's going to have to be a bit more movement. You've only got the one main block. You've got the Anvil of Doom, obviously providing a bit of support, and you've got your Quarrelers, which can do a bit, but they're not quite the same as Longbeards and Iron Breakers. So the gyrocopters being able to, you can either put the 2 groups of 3, move them together up a flank and really sort of roll up a flank with shooting, giving them all the brimstone guns as well. I think that just gives them that extra flexibility of dealing with those higher toughness units. I say this is an all-comers list. And, you know, this is very much more a gun-line style list, with the fact you've got all 3 units in core missile units. You've got the 3 gyrocopters, which are based on shooting. You've got a bolt thrower in there as well for Rune of Skewering. So you're pretty much, we're putting a lot of missile fire to try and wear as much enemy down for when it reaches those iron breakers. This is definitely not an uber melee army. You know, you're going to be reliant on doing as much damage as you can, focusing damage where possible on certain units, maybe even causing panic. Total, though, a little bit less in the special. That's because we spent more on our characters and core. A total of 816 points out of the 1250. And then in the rare category, 2 organ guns, which of course are going to be babysat by the 2 engineers. And again, this is not competitive meta. It's not been min-maxed or anything like that. This is all about being fun to play and offering something different than the previous army list. So where the previous army list was all about big infantry blocks with, you know, the king and the support and everything, this is more about having almost a true gun line, as much firepower going down range as you can as stuff is coming towards you. You're probably not going to be pushing your iron breakers much up into the mid board, and as you do push them up, you're going to be obviously giving a lot of support with the quarrelers and rangers, but utilizing as much of that missile fire as possible. So it's more of a gun line style list, a bit more static for most of the units, but that's kind of mitigated a bit because of the 2 lots of gyrocopters. But you do have an Anvil of Doom, which of course is immovable. So you don't really want to be running too far away from that thing, because it does have a range on its bound spells as well. So the only thing to think of an army like this that is relatively more static will depend upon your deployment and everything else, whereas the previous army list is probably a little bit more flexible with the type of table and deployment zones you're having, whereas this one, you know, if you're playing deployment zones on the short edge of the board and you're playing down the long edge moving towards the enemy, that's quite a distance. Can give you some interesting things in terms of shooting and moving back and shooting and moving back, but you're not going to be controlling much of the board like that. There you go. So that's the second sample army list. As I say, the aim, fun to play against. Anyone that is playing against dwarves is going to be expecting shooting, so I don't think anyone should be a surprise when you've got a gun line. This isn't too gun liney. Dwarves, they're going to have lots of crossbows, they're going to have lots of shooting. It's just the way they are, and they're slow. So, that is the type of army that you're playing against by and large. If you found this useful, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down and let me know what you think about the army list in the comments down below. Anything that you might like to change or like to try. Like I say, please, again, keep in mind, and I'll say it again, it's not competitive, it's not meta. It's supposed to be fun. If you want to see more, though, please hit that subscribe button. It's free for you to do. It takes 2 seconds for you to do. It's a massive deal for me, so thank you for that in advance, and thank you to all those that have already subscribed. You've been watching The Ghost Hour. We have 1 episode left to go, and I'm going to leave it as a surprise, and that will wrap up our Dwarven faction focus. Moving on, after the Dwarven faction focus, to the next faction in our Forces of Fantasy, and we're doing it literally faction by faction. So after the Dwarfs, we'll be taking a look at the Empire of Man.